Hello, everybody. Okay, so I did up a little bit of a explanation on Sudoku, how to play it, how to kind of make your own, and then in the process, some of the flaws that come with trying to basically design your own game from scratch versus using something that has been designed by some sort of algorithm or however they come up with the patterns for a game of Sudoku before you start solving it. Okay, my computer's just starting up. But you know how, Sudoku is like it's a 3x3 big grid, kind of X's and O's looking thing. And then meshed inside of each of those is another 3x3, like 9 square mesh or grid. And so you have these little pockets of a 9x9 or a 3x3, and each of them supposed to contain 1 through 9. And then you have your big 3x3, which is in itself supposed to contain 1 through 9 in each row and each column, and the diagonals are not in this equation. So you're trying to fill up a square 1 through 9, and then a row 1 through 9, and then a column 1 through 9. And so there can only be one of the 1 through 9s in each row, column, and square. So it's like there are 3 different limiting factors, which means that like every point requires 3 points to come from, just like a dimension in space. And so you have a limiting factor of row, limiting factor of column, and limiting factor of square. And ideally, you'll have a row and a column with the same number in it, and that will give you the square. Or you'll have 2 completely finished squares that are kind of like adjacent to each other in some way, and then the square in between them you can completely fill up that square with the numbers that don't interfere with these other 2 squares. So that's like the ideal situation. Let's jump in. So I'm just setting up here I'm just getting an aesthetic shot. Don't mind me. But so my girlfriend has this game of magnetic Sudoku, and she never uses it. And I'll tell you about that later, but it comes with all the little magnet numbers. So, what is it? 81 magnet numbers, 9 of each, 1 through 9. And then there's the little paper that came with it, just went out of view there, and it comes with that, and that is, it has 12 different puzzles on it, and they're like unsolved and then also solved. So there's 24, 12 of them unsolved, and then 12 of them are those same puzzles solved. And so it's good. You can do like 12 different puzzles off the bat, on a plane or in a car, in theory. But setting it up with these little magnet pieces is just a big pain in the butt, and like it's the worst thing ever. So here I'm setting up based off of the very first puzzle. I assume they go harder and harder, but 1 through 12. So here is the first puzzle. It's the easiest, and you're gonna eventually see, but it fills up most of the board before I even start playing. So just the unsolved puzzle itself is quite full. But here you can see like the center, it's filled up, except for the very, very center one, which, is going to be pretty easy. But this is good. This is a good jumping off point, especially if you're like a kid in a car who is trying to entertain themselves, and this was like pre cell phones, pre touchscreens. Then you sort of needed these magnetic games to entertain yourself in a car. Oh, I've turned on the light. It's pretty damn. But okay, so I'm done the puzzle here. And I'm just rearranging all the little silly magnets there. And the puzzle's pretty straightforward, I think, for this one. It's a little messy. It's a little hard to get those guys exactly in a straight row. They kind of want to be wherever they want to be. So here we're jumping in. We've got a better shot here, and we can see, so like the very center is just missing an 8. And then, so if you want to take this shot and set it up on like a piece of paper or something, then that puzzle that was just there a second ago, that you could take that, you could solve that. That's a genuine puzzle that someone set up somewhere, and that is completely solvable. So yeah, feel free to steal that, pause that video quickly, and copy that down. Now here I'm trying to set up my own puzzle, just based off of nothing, just based off of my own rhythm. And so kind of the idea that I thought made sense and at the time was, I was like, how can you kind of infinitely set up your own puzzles? What's an easy pattern to follow? And so I thought it made sense to kind of go diagonal in both directions, putting down random numbers, because if you do diagonals there, I just nudge that over to try and fill up that row a little more. But if you do diagonals at first, none of them can ever interfere with each other, because the diagonals don't correspond with one another. They don't interact. Although I do now have like an 8 on the top right and an 8 on the bottom right, and those, could have interacted. So I had to keep an eye on that. And then there's an 8 on the top left too, so I had to keep an eye on that. And then now I'm kind of going just straight top to bottom in a slightly randomized pattern. And so just trying to fill up more squares in the crosswise direction. That's a 2. For some reason, I never figured that out up until basically right now. But that was a little smudgy too. And for some reason, I was like, oh, that's just a spare one. But if there's 81 magnets and there's 81 squares, then I literally cannot afford to not have that 2. So that was the puzzle that I came up with, and I left it for my girlfriend, and she said it was way too hard. And looking at it right now, yeah, there's like basically no numbers on there. I would not really recommend this way of setting up, but if you really wanted to, it is a legitimate way to randomize coming up with kind of new puzzles, just putting down random numbers every day, maybe walking away for half an hour and then coming back and trying to solve that puzzle that you created for yourself. And that's easy to do with these magnet devices, if you have the patience for it. I would say it's an exercise in patience. So just take that as you will. And yeah, here I'm just showing off like a 1 through 9 grid pattern that could exist. So this is more something that I was trying to come up with that basically anybody could do for themselves. Just a Sharpie and a piece of paper, and drawing up one of those 3x3 grids, and then coming up with a 3x3 grid inside of each of those. And I'm not sure what I'm diagonaling here, but okay. And actually what I found later on is that having a ruler really helps me solve Sudoku puzzles, because I can isolate a row and a column and really try and like hone in on a specific number that I'm trying to solve for. And so I can kind of ruler my way around the page, and that helps me isolate a little thing. So this is my second method of coming up with my own idea is, so coming up with your own on a daily basis, instead of doing that diagonal cross and then that up down side to side cross that I thought of, which left too much to the imagination, I think. So here I was trying to come up with one, and my idea was you start with the center and you fill out a bunch of the center, because the center corresponds with top, bottom, left, and right. So a decent amount of the rest of the game. So you fill out the center with whatever you want in there, and then the left and right, up and down, you fill out based off of what the center has in it. And then the corners you can fill out based off of what the top, bottom, left, and right have in them, which means that the whole, it can kind of propagate outward from the center. The center is like the focal point, and then you can put numbers out further, and they will like ricochet off of each other and complement one another a little, and it's more of a complementary way of setting it up than the way I did it before with just crosswise. And yeah, that was just like me doing whatever I wanted. This at least has like a cause and effect element to it. So here I'm trying to set up like, oh, what's a good number that can go in the center over here or on the right? I can put a 2 in there. And so here, what am I looking for? So I'm trying to fill out a bunch of 2s, make it easy for someone to solve all the 2s later on. So I'm like, oh, can I put a 2 here, 2 there? Okay, so I was trying to figure out where I could put all my 2s, and then I threw a 1 in there, and now I can try and figure out, well, okay, where can I put that next 1? Oh no, I was looking for 9s, I guess. So I'm still kind of sticking with that diagonal pattern. I seem to like that. You can kind of see a lot of diagonals going on within the individual squares. But yeah, so start from center, move your way out, and then at least 3 numbers in each square of 9. And that kind of really, that makes the puzzle a little more solvable. That was my idea anyways. So this is me coming back later and actually trying to solve my own puzzle. And I tell you what, it does not go well. It's pretty good, but I get to a point that you'll see where I have royally screwed up, and I don't know if it's me solving or the creator or me the solver that has failed. But part of the problem was because I used the same pen as the creator and the solver. I couldn't tell which numbers I was allowed to cross out and which numbers were like the permanent numbers that I used to set up the puzzle. And so I was stuck wondering if I had screwed up and I could change things, or if I had screwed up and that was it. It was set in stone, my mistakes. So I would at least recommend have 2 different colored pens to create your puzzles and solve them. So here I'm stumped. Oh man, I sat there for a while. Basically what ends up happening, so I put 2 little 9s there, and I go for the easy ones. At some point, what I end up thinking is I can basically do whatever I want and kind of get away with it. And that comes back to bite me 2 or 3 different times. I think I solve for like 5s, and then I solve for 4s or something, and the 4s get in the way of the 5s. And like here I'm doing 8s, and I'm like, oh, 8. I'm like, oh, this 8 can go wherever I want it to go. Because there's an 8 there. And up top on the left. And then there's a... So yeah, so you can see there's an 8. So I'm like, oh, I triangulated I switched to 3s. Oh my gosh. So yeah, I didn't know what I was doing. So now I've moved on to 3s. I've given up on 8s completely. So now I'm like, okay, there's a 3 up top in the middle there. So I got that 3 in the bottom middle, and then I put a random 3 on the bottom right, and that helped me solve the random 3 on the bottom left. And then, I'm doing my rounds, my circles, to get all the 3s and everything. So this backfires, you'll see. So now let's fill in the 4s as fast as we possibly can. So then, okay, so we're seeing, okay, we've got 4 here, 4 here. Everything's looking pretty good. We're moving over to the right. We've got 4. Okay, the only place a 4 can go is somewhere on either the top or the bottom square. Okay, so I'm like, okay, I'll put a 4 here because that won't interfere with anything on that far top right one. How about this middle? Will that screw anything up? So now I'm like, okay, well, I can only put a 4 on the top middle one in that left side. So the bottom middle one now can't have a 4 on the left side. So then I come over and I'm like, okay, top right, I'll put a 4 in the middle, on the right, and then the middle one on the top, bottom left. So now I throw a 4 in the bottom middle one in the very center, and I think I've solved my problems. So I move on to 5s. 5s are nice and easy. We've got, okay, couple 5s, closes me in on that one spot on the top right. I don't know what I'm looking so hard for. There's only one spot that it can go. Oh, because there's no spots it can go. Because it can only go in the middle row, and the middle row is completely taken up. In fact, it can only go, I think, where that 9 is in the top right. So now I put a 5. I just put a 5 where it can't even go. So the last part of this video is me basically becoming resigned to my fate and giving up. And you'll see that, yeah, I don't know what I'm allowed to cross out because it's all just black felt pen. So there's a flaw. That was one flaw in my plan. The second one is I don't know if the puzzle I set up originally was solvable. Like, I assume so, just because it was a bunch of numbers on a page. Like, why would that be the fault of the puzzle versus the puzzle solver? And I do think it was the puzzle solver's fault, not the puzzle maker's fault. But it does beg the question, is the puzzle maker any good? And how do you check that? Is there a little algorithm to see if a Sudoku puzzle is even solvable? Or is it just like, there's numbers on a page, do your worst? Because I think I've heard that there's more than one way to solve a Sudoku puzzle. So that could be part of the problem, is I just failed in every respect as the solver. And in no way am I a good Sudoku solver. So we can see that here. But anyways, hopefully you understand how to play the game and maybe how not to play the game. And I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you get out there and do some puzzles. Yeah. Have a good one, everybody. Bye.